This show is brought to you by Sparkade, our ADHD game-based learning platform that helps kids transform challenges into opportunities. Parents and educators, join the waitlist at play.sparkade.app/waitlist and be among the first to experience Sparkade when we launch. That is play.sparkade.app. You've landed at Spark Launch, the guide star for embracing what it means to be neurodiverse. Here, we navigate mental health triumphs and tribulations from all across the spectrum, charting a course to the shared experiences that unite us, and discovering how to embody the unique strengths within neurodivergent and neurotypical alike, igniting your spark and launching it into a better tomorrow. Today's guest is Ryan Mayer, a certified ADHD coach on a mission to help others navigate through the storms caused by ADHD. Through empathy, enthusiasm, and education, Ryan empowers people to rediscover beliefs in themselves. He's the creator of the Conquer Your ADHD system, and his coaching tackles challenges like time management, overwhelm, and procrastination, all while feeling supported and understood. Welcome to the show.
So honored to be here. And as you were reading it, I was thinking, wow, I would love to work with that guy because I struggle with those things.
Well, welcome to the show, Ryan. You and I met a year and a half ago, and we just hit it off our very first meeting. I really felt we've met in our past lives. There was that instant chemistry. And I was just networking with the neurodivergent community because I had just come out as a neurodivergent person. And I'm like, where are my people? So when I met you, it just was amazing. And we were talking about so many different things. And here we are. We are right here, right now, recording this. So tell us how you got here and why are you doing what you're doing? What's your story? What's your inspiration?
There are so many things that I think of when you ask the question, because as Mike read in my bio, what I do to help my clients as a certified ADHD coach is to navigate through the storms that are caused in our lives by the way that our brain is wired. And to answer your question, where am I at? I am on the other side of the bridge. And there's underneath is the raging river of consequences. So I've gotten pulled into those rapids many times. And so I felt called to take all those challenges and put them together to build a bridge over that river. So I consider myself a bridge builder, and I'm now helping others to cross that river without having to have all of the pain that I did on the way. And I got diagnosed with ADHD when I was in high school. And the very short story about that was doing really well in school and in grade school. And then when I hit some certain quantitative subjects, my visual way of processing the world wasn't really helping me out. And I noticed that I started finishing last in every test, not in grades, but just literally the last one to turn it in. And this was time after time. And I just thought, that's really interesting. And then my mom noticed when I was played basketball and baseball in high school. And I'll never forget this time where I came out of practice one night, and this was before I could drive. So, your parents come and pick you up. And I got in the car and she said, I have a question. What do you do in there? And I was like, well, what do you mean, Mom? I'm changing after practice. And she said, no, I know that, but everyone else is doing that too. And you're always the last one out. What do you do in there? And I just laughed and I said, well, I don't know. I guess I'm just talking to other people. So we started seeing this pattern, and there was stress that came as a result of that in different areas of life. So then we explored a diagnosis, and I'll never forget as the psychiatrist is reading down the description of ADHD, and I'm just thinking, check, 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 check. And I had this mixture, and this is what a lot of my clients tell me they experience, equal parts relief and regret. Like relief because, oh, thank goodness, it's not because I messed up or it's not because I'm broken. There's a reason for this. But then the regret of, and obviously I was only in high school. Other people, especially women, I find are getting diagnosed in their 30s, 40s, 50s and beyond. A lot of people will have this feeling of regret of, if I only would have known, things could have been different. So I carried on, went into college, and in college, I excelled in the things that leveraged my strengths. As we have talked about before, I love people. And I get energized when I'm around others and finding ways that I can help them and make connections. So in the areas of college where I had to do that, I was really good at it. And in the areas where I had to study and do things over a long period of time to have it ready by the end of the term, I didn't do so well. So thankfully, I made the decision to go to the Office of Student Services and showed my documentation of my ADHD diagnosis. So if anyone's listening, this is one tip I would say. If I could turn back time, I would go back and tell my younger self, whoosh, 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 go to the student services office. Don't try to be too proud. Get in there and get your accommodations so that you don't have a mental breakdown when you're in the huge lecture hall and all you can hear is the clicking of the pens or the tapping of the feet or the ticking clock. So that's my piece of advice. If you are a college student or if you're about to go to college or if you have a child who's in college, if they have ADHD, tell them to put their pride to the side. Ooh, that sounds catchy. Put your pride to the side because it's time to decide to go to student services and just get the help that you need. I was able to get a distraction reduced environment as well as extended time. And it was so helpful. It was night and day difference. And as I'm sitting there taking the exam, thinking to myself, man, that was way easier. I don't have nearly as much test anxiety. So then I graduate college and I figured I'm a natural born salesperson and I come from a long line of successful salespeople. So watch out, world. Here I come. I'm going to just make this big splash until I didn't. In fact, never said it this way before, but not only did I not make a splash, but I nearly drowned a couple of times, drowning in tasks, drowning in projects, drowning in overwhelm. And this is the part of my story that really starts my motivation that brought me to where I am now. If I could describe the lowest points of my time in the corporate world, one word to sum it all up would be hopeless. Because no matter how early I got to the office, how late I stayed, how hard I worked, how much I isolated myself to try to focus, it was, as they say in The Greatest Showman, never enough, never, never. So it's like, no matter how hard I tried, I just wasn't ever going to reach, get above water. So I was, as I like to say, liberated from employment several times and released back into the wild. And I learned a lot. And I kept asking, I am a faith-based person. I'm Christian, Roman Catholic. And so I was praying and just asking, like, why does this keep happening to me? I'm trying my best. I'm being a good person. And kind of what I got back was like, the reason I went through these, it wasn't an accident, because I ended up in 2018, I went to the International ADHD Conference, which, by the way, I didn't even know was a thing. I only found it because I was desperately Googling, trying to find some help. And as fate would have it, just as you were saying, Chaya, right at the beginning about like serendipitous meeting, I ended up meeting the founder and president of the ADHD Coaching Academy, David Gawork, who, by the way, would be a great person to have on the show at some point. And very much like when you and I met for the first time, he and I, our first conversation was just such an epic one. And we ended up talking for 2.5 hours. And I'm just thinking, wow, like I'm a no one. I'm new on the scene. And this guy's a very big deal. And he's giving all the time to me. And at the end, he said to me, Ryan, I think you would make a really good ADHD coach. And I said, oh, you mean like life coach? Yeah, I don't think so, but thanks. Because I had a certain view of life coaches. To me, a life coach was someone who couldn't hack it in other professions. So they just put up a sign and say like, hey, I'm a life coach now. But I realized there's so much more to it. So fast forward, I'm in one of my last corporate jobs and was really struggling because it was something that I didn't fully grasp all the benefits of the technology we were selling. There's a lot of personnel and egos and all kinds of things, but I was just very depressed, to be honest. I was in a very dark emotional place. And my wife asked me a question, changed the course of my life forever. And she asked, it's simple, but powerful. Here's what she said. Ryan, if you could do anything, what would you do for work? And she said, I'm asking because you're such a happy person. You're so energetic, yet you're so down all the time now. And your family and I are starting to get worried about you, because I was losing weight and I just didn't have energy and I was just depressed and burnt out and feeling hopeless, because it's like, doesn't matter. Like, why am I even trying? So when she asked me that, I went right back to that moment when I was talking with David Gawork at the conference. And it was like this moment of clarity. And that's why I say in the dark is where I found my spark. And the spark of hope was I could be an ADHD coach. And like, what if all of these challenges that I've been through could be for a purpose? Like I could use them to help other people. And so that's why I say specifically in my mission statement, like on my website, is I help people like me because I want people to know. It's amazing how similar so many of us are, regardless of where we are in the world, what our backgrounds are, what our culture is, what our religion is, age, sex, location, doesn't matter. We have very similar challenges. So anyway, in 2020, I decided to take the leap and start my coaching practice. And this little thing called the global pandemic happened. And when that happened, it was, again, I can't make this up because I feel like it was so serendipitous. One of my current clients at the time referred someone to me. And this young man, 19-year-old from New York City, a Black kid. And he said to me, "So you're a coach?" "Well, so am I." And I'm like, "Oh, what are you coaching? Like you're 19 years old." And he said, "I'm a social media coach." I'm like, "Oh, interesting." And I'm like, "All right, well, my coaching is however many hundreds of dollars." And he said, "Yeah, I can't afford that, but how about we barter and I'll coach you on social media and you coach me on my ADHD?" And I was like, "All right, well, I'm not doing much on social media right now, so why not?" And he said, "What platform are you thinking?" And I said, "Well, I'm really looking for like working with professionals. I want my image to be real polished. So LinkedIn would be where I would go." And he said, I'll never forget. He goes, no, bro. That's not where you want to be. You got to be on TikTok. And at the time I was 35. I'm 40 now. And I said, so I'm a 35-year-old dad. And at the time, TikTok was just like teenagers doing choreographed dances and lip syncing trendy songs. And I just thought, that's not me. And he said, well, if you want to work with me, that's what we're going to do. I'm like, all right. So I go on to TikTok. By the way, we're almost done with Coach Ryan's story. Hang on, everyone. So I get onto TikTok and I'm still like, these numbers still kind of blow my mind to even say them, but it was just the perfect storm of the pandemic and people's routines were gone and they're trying to be teachers at home when they're not teachers and it's just chaos and all their systems are breaking down. So I think they were just ready. Well, first of all, they were spending more time on social media, but then they were ready to hear about ADHD because they were realizing, I'm really struggling staying organized. So I went from 0 followers on TikTok and in 60 days, I had 330,000 followers. And I say that less to be like, yay, Coach Ryan. I mean, don't get me wrong. I worked very hard and I have fun, entertaining, engaging content that's also educational and relatable. But more importantly than that is the bigger reason why we're all here is that we are living in a world that's not built for us. And I think people were just ready to start hearing the message because I made a decision when I started creating content that I'm not going to mask anymore. I'm done doing that. I'm taking off the filter and I'm just going to talk about my experience authentically. And so many people have commented on that over the last 5 years about when I listen to your stuff, I can tell that you really mean it. And it's true because I know how painful it can be and how infuriating it is to know exactly what to do. You know how to do it. You know why it's important, but you can't get your brain to shift into gear. So as I started pulling together these different resources and things that had worked for me, it was so fulfilling to be able to start helping other people. So I've been doing this now for 5 years and these numbers are pretty wild, but I've had the privilege and the honor of coaching people from 24 different countries around the world and coached hundreds of people now. And I only put that out there not to be like, hey, look at me, I'm so awesome. I'm saying it because I was the person who wasn't even good enough to be kept at a corporate job. They kept kicking me out. And now I'm a global thought leader and influencer, a top voice on LinkedIn. And my story, I just want it to be a beacon of hope for people who feel defeated. Like there's no chance that they're going to be able to do anything about it. So I still get emotional telling that story, but that's my short answer to how I got here.
It was so much fun listening to your story, although, the challenges, but that challenges are part of life. And I love the bridge concept. When we get on the other side, it's beautiful. And everybody has a different bridge to cross. And that is what you're here to help, to find out which bridge and where do I get to go? Because the answers are inside of us. And I love the examples that you gave, the rejections that you've had from the corporate world. They were all giving you a message, but you were not willing to listen until it was the right time. But maybe they were giving enough experiences so that you really feel it. I mean, when I look at my life as well, I was stuck, but there's always a timing, a divine timing for that. And so I have no regrets. I've only had lessons, and I've learned from those lessons to get on the other side.
Totally. Love that.
Yeah. So talk a little bit more about that bridge from your experience now that you've coached hundreds of people from across the globe. I love this whole global impact because we're all the same, just different bodies, different genders, skin color. But at the end of the day, we're all the same.
Yeah, we're all connected. We're all human. And it's such a beautiful thing and really a gift for me to be able to just be exposed to such a diverse tapestry of humanity in the work that I do, because I'm meeting people that I never would have met otherwise. And it's a privilege as a coach to be able to have someone allow you into their innermost thoughts and challenges and goals. And that's why, in addition to saying a beacon of hope, I also say I consider myself to be a keeper of dreams, where it's like, I know what it's like to have the flame almost like completely extinguished by the world. And I want to be the one to like blow on that and give it some air and help to reignite them. Just because I've built a coaching practice, and I always emphasize this during my introductory call with potential new clients, I tell them, I don't know everything. And being on the other side of the bridge, the word that I like to use, one of my favorite words, is fascinating, because that's usually what I fill in instead of other negative words that I would use towards myself with negative self-talk. And I think to myself, it's fascinating. And I think this can apply to many people in many different situations, but it's fascinating to me how when I'm helping others, it's so clear to me how to help them cross the bridge. But that doesn't mean that I have everything figured out by any means, because I loved what you said a few minutes ago, that the answers are already inside of us. And so this is when people coach with me, I tell them it's not about me providing some sort of earth-shattering, mind-blowing insights that they never knew. It's really about helping them. Like there's a couple, I always call it the Coach Ryanisms or the Ryan one-liners, that being able to have that sacred space where you can slow down your brain enough to actually stop. And in my coach training program, they called it the power of the pause, to be able to pause long enough to just think about what's happening. Because for so many of us with ADHD, whether we're more on the inattentive side or more on the hyperactive side, we're either physically moving all around, or we are internally, just our mind is going a million miles an hour, and we don't usually stop to think about what's happening. So that's what I think is just holding that space for people to let them look inside themselves to figure out, oh, actually, you're right, coach. I have been in this kind of situation before, and I do know how to get out of it. I just kind of forgot that. So that's how I help people. And in fact, it's it can be challenging. Like I just had a client from overseas. He engaged with me in coaching. And I always I've now developed this, what would I call it? A policy that people must commit to 3 months of coaching. And it has nothing to do with money. And it has everything to do with ADHD and just how I've learned that when I start holding up the mirror for them and helping them to see the reality of some of their behaviors, and I'm providing observations, and I'm not there to sugarcoat it for them. I'm there to help them make progress. And sometimes progress is painful. And so this person that I was working with, he said, I'm just confused because, we've been working together for a little over a month, but most of the insights and the work has all come from me. And I said, that's exactly what coaching is. There's obviously some work to be done about aligning the expectations there, but I just want to tell everyone who's listening, you probably already know what you need to do. And the most beneficial thing about any kind of coaching is that you have that external accountability, because we have that people-pleasing tendency as ADHDers that we don't want to let anyone down. And obviously that's kind of a universal human truth in general, but I feel like it's amplified for us because we've had so many past failures that we don't want to disappoint anyone, including ourselves. So when you have someone who's cheering you on, even though I'm not going to come down on my clients and say, hey, you said you're going to do that thing, you didn't do it. I'm going to say, hey, last call, you had told me that something that was really important for you to try to make progress on is, for example, cleaning the garage. We had talked about a plan to break it down to steps, write it out, or, whatever they wanted to do. And if they did it, awesome. If they didn't do it, that's okay too. I tell them my friend Anne-Laure Lecomte, who might be another person to write down to have on the podcast. She's an author of a book called Tiny Experiments. And so I always tell my clients, we're just experimenting, because if we can change our perspective on it and our mindset around, I'm just testing different things. And because instead of viewing it as, oh, I failed again, don't look at it as a failure. Look at it as you've learned something that didn't work for you, and let's try something else. And then having that accountability partner that they can check in with me. So that's kind of more of what I do now as the person on, quote unquote, the other side of the bridge. I'm still very much on my journey every single day. I'm fighting the same battles, but I can at least help guide them, and then they can choose the path that they feel is best for them.
I love that you bring up the idea of what doesn't work for you isn't a failure. And that's something that's so important, particularly when you're dealing with topics of invisible disabilities, right? Because there's a lot of shame and a lot of self-frustration that's built into those invisible disabilities, where if it's something more concrete, you're able to kind of go with it a little bit more. But there's always that feeling whenever it can't be seen that I should be able to just get over it, whatever that would even mean in that context. But it's about that way just doesn't work for you. But there are ways you can go about things. That's still open to you. That's still a power that you have. And talking about your approach to coaching, how important is it to connect an ADHD person's concrete skills? Every ADHD person has a series of skill types that they are very adept at. Sometimes they're not the most helpful, but they're very adept at. And how important is it to connect those concrete skills to the skill sets they do struggle with maintaining?
So, Mike, are you trying to suggest that my ability to doodle and make random little Halloween decorations for my children isn't useful as an ADHD life coach? No, I'm really glad you bring up the concept of strengths. And that's actually one of the pillars of my coaching practice, is reminding them and reconnecting them with their signature strengths. And it's amazing when I take them through the exercises and then they can review it. And to help to avoid us forgetting about it, I have them print out an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper that they can put somewhere where they'll see it, to remind them whenever they're stuck on a problem, they can always look at that sheet of paper and think, okay, which one of these unique gifts that I have could I potentially leverage in this situation? And all kidding aside with my doodling, it does help me sometimes to illustrate to maybe a more visual processor client of an idea that I might have, and just articulate it for an audience in a simpler way. But you talked about how people can take different approaches and it's not always accepted. And that immediately takes me back to one of my most memorable, even though it was a very, I don't want to call it traumatic, but it was a very negative experience where I thought I had finally kind of like cracked the code. I worked in a recruitment team for an organization. And when I started making my dreams come true, because I was the recruiter and there was a team, below us that their duties were to support us. So I could go out and be the hunter-gatherer presenter that I love being and do the hard part about getting the candidate to say yes, because that's the skill. And I was exceptional at doing that. But where the wheels fell off is that the detailed follow-up about like, okay, they've said yes now, get the background check and the drug screen and get them to sign all the paperwork and organize that person to come in to do a real estate visit and things like that. And that's where I would get lost. And so what I found was one of my teammates who despised doing presentations, and I could tell why, because she was really bad at them. I offered to take all of hers if she could help me with some of my administrative follow-up stuff, which she was really, really good at. And she's like, wait, that's it? And she said, that's too easy. Yeah, let's go. I'm in. So this went on for about a month or so. And then the leadership got wind of it. And I got called into the senior director's office. What's this I hear about you taking on all of the presentations for so-and-so and she's doing your work for you? I said, well, it's something called job carving or job sharing, where, it's really, we're getting better results. I've resolved the issue of me not being able to do the follow-up. She does not like doing those presentations. I love them. And we're getting much more engagement from the departments I present to than we ever have. So I'm excited about it. And to your point, Mike, I'll never forget, he said, well, that's nice and it's a very creative solution, but that's not how we do it here. So Ryan, I need you to just go back to your desk and do your job. Let us figure out the decisions about who does what. And so, I walked back with like my tail between my legs and just like, well, back to the part of the job I hate. And what I echo what Mike said earlier about the invisible disability. People have no idea because while they know, of course, we're going to make accommodations for someone who's in a wheelchair, like we've got to have ramps, we've got to have elevators and make things accessible. But when I requested to get in to work in a less bustling area, because we were just in this open office environment where I told them I can't not hear everyone's conversations. It's just how I'm built. So I'm wondering if I could get, like one of the open offices. But then they said, the policy, that's based on seniority. And so has been doing better than you and has been here longer. So that office goes to them. So to me, it totally misses the point that results get respect. Like we're going for the end result. And so many organizations are so caught up in, well, that's not how we do it here, or this is how it's always been done, that they're missing out on such an exceptional group of people that have diverse skills that they can bring to their teams.
Absolutely. They're just stuck in the process and not looking at the big picture, the end result that we ADHDers can clearly see. It just breaks my heart because every day, every minute should be joyful. And when organizations don't honor that joy within people and force them into boxes, I hope they get it that they're doing a big disservice by forcing them into boxes instead of seeing what are people good at and what do they love to do and just give them those jobs. It's beyond me why people don't get it.
And that's actually why the newest kind of evolution for my coaching practice, I'm still maintaining the one-on-one and the group coaching. And I actually have a couple associate coaches that have joined my team, which has been incredible, building a team around me. But where I think I can even make a bigger impact is back in the workplace, to go back to help people to see, what if this is how you're doing now? How do you think you'd be doing if everyone on the team could bring their authentic self and all of their skills to the workplace? And if you just could ask them a very simple question like, hey, how is this going for you? Is there something else that you'd want to be doing? Or is there a different way that you'd want to go about it that would be easier for you? And so I'm starting to do this neuro inclusion consulting to help people see that. I always say little hinges swing big doors. Like these subtle shifts can have a huge impact if you just allow people to do it the way that's easiest for them to do it.
I just want to talk about one thing, which I made this connection pattern. I saw the pattern and I want to talk about that pattern. You had talked about you love talking. You just discovered that early on that you were great at speaking. And then you thought it was going to be sales. So you tried that, but you still pursued that interest. You had figured out a strength in yourself. And then you tried that and that didn't work for various reasons, which you explained. And that led you to coaching. And I really feel this is where we have to know what our strengths are. Nobody better than ourselves could tell that. And you as a coach make people realize that, right? It's about that self-realization because we have that answer inside of us. And then you use that skill, that talent as much as you can. That's all I can say. Do that more. And then the skills that we're not good at, we can always find someone, another ADHDer, probably. We are a massive network of people. We've come here with our own strengths and gifts. We're not meant to be good at everything. Even the neurotypicals, they're not good at everything. So,
right.
Right. So it's just one life. Why can't we all do what we love and let other people do what they love? And it's not a competition. There's no prize for that. And we just have to live life joyfully, experience, learn lessons, and keep moving.
And you said something really profound earlier on when you said every day should be joyful. And that's to me what it really comes down to. And that was pretty much the opposite of what my corporate experience was. And for a while, I just had resigned to the thought that, okay, well, I guess being a grown-up and being in the working world is just always going to be miserable. That's just how it is. And I've realized now it does not have to be that way. And in fact, I'm really glad you talked about like tapping into my own strengths, because going all the way back to grade school, that's when I really excelled in school. And I made the connection that it was, and this is again, really fascinating to me. I am the oldest child and in my family. I have two younger siblings that I'm really close with. And there was 6 years in between me and my brother, the next sibling. So during that span and a little bit longer, like my mom was available to help me with my homework. And what we would do is I would typically lay down on the couch and she would read my textbooks to me. And I was able to read at some point, but then I just found that I could absorb and retain the information much better when she read it. And then as time went on and I had to do more of my own work, but became a parent, that was a struggle. But now, circling all the way back now, as a 40-year-old, people have remarked about my exceptional listening skills and empathy of just connecting with people. And I realized that was misplaced in corporate, because I'll never forget my first job ever. I was a recruiter at a staffing industry, and there's like smile and dial, like you're trying to make as many phone calls to reach the right people. And I remember having a particularly meaningful conversation with a prospective client, and my manager came around and was like listening in. And so I hung up and I thought, that was a good one. He's probably going to compliment me on how I really connected with that guy. And this was a very competitive culture. And so they only used last names for some reason. So, Mayor, I listened to your call. I'm like, yeah. And he said, we're not here to make friends. We're here to fill jobs. So you need to tighten it up. You need to get to the point. And I'm just thinking like, oh, I thought I was doing a good job. And that person really appreciated it, but okay. And now I'm able to do that. Like I'm getting paid more than I've ever made in my life because I'm able to help people feel heard and give them a space and get to know them. And I know this is an exceptional gift for me because as soon as I'm talking with someone, it's like, and again, this is, I know it's like divine in nature where it just downloads right into my brain. Like the last time that I talked with this person, we talked about da, 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 and it's just there. And I know what my weaknesses are, all the detail work and the follow-up work. So then when I built my own business, I think back to my wife's question, if you could do anything, what would you do? I would build a team around me to plug all of the holes in my executive function or the areas where I'm not strong. And that's what I've done. So now I can just coach. I can show up like I did today for the podcast and I just talk and I love it. And I love helping to inspire other people, and other folks will do the other things that I'm not good at. For 2 other things I wrote down, I don't want to forget. I tell my clients, they probably feel like I do, like a duck, because when you look on the surface, the duck is just smoothly going along, and underneath they're paddling like crazy to try to keep up and using so much energy. And that, back to Mike's point about it being an invisible disability, people have no idea how much harder it is for us to do anything. I was just talking to a new client yesterday and she's talking about how embarrassed she is, how much energy and focus it takes for her to just shower and get out the door. And she's like, I'm sure other people do not get as exhausted as I do just getting myself ready. So just for anyone who's listening, just want to let you know you're not alone in that. And the one other thing I wanted to say, because I'm been able to leverage my creativity and my visual ideas to come up with a line of ADHD merch. For those who are just listening, I'm wearing a shirt that says powered by ADHD, and it's a battery, because my clients know I'm always talking about how can you recharge your battery? How can you do something you enjoy to recharge? So that's what it's about for me.
That hits on something that's very important for anyone, particularly neurodivergent folks, obviously, is the role self-empathy plays before you begin any journey to finding your accommodations or finding yourself or whatever else, is first starting from a place of you deserve the empathy that you would impart to other people or you would want to impart to other people. You can reflect that back on yourself and give yourself some patience and find yourself some time to do those things. And obviously just wanting to go out and get coaching and get some help, I think is actually, people sometimes don't realize it, but that's actually a step in being empathetic to yourself and realizing that you actually are deserving of some sort of assistance, some sort of shoulder to lean on for those things. So thank you for doing what you do and helping so many people who otherwise would fall through the cracks and never be allowed to be seen because most people just kind of push them off to the side.
Well, speaking of meaningful merch, I noticed right away the sweatshirt that you're wearing that says you deserve to be loved. And that's not only by others, but also by ourselves. And I was just foraging around my files to try to find the thing I was going to show you. But it's essentially Like when you get onto a jet and they'll say, if we should experience an unexpected drop in cabin pressure, please put on your own oxygen mask first before attempting to help others. Thank you. I took a picture on my phone is off. But anyways, it was a mask that said self-care, and it's a person breathing and clearly smiling. And then they have ADHD brain. There was 2 hearts. It says big feels. So in other words, like we feel things really big compared to others. And the whole idea here is we can't empty our battery or our hearts for others if we're not taking care of ourselves. Because I heard this from some YouTube video recently, which I really liked, that self-care is not selfish. Like it's actually strategic. I'm going to say that one more time. Self-care is not selfish. It's strategic. So on the days when you feel like, because of your ADHD and your negative self-talk, like you have to keep pushing. No, I'm not good enough. I didn't do a good enough job. Okay, even if you didn't get the thing done, you're just going to have diminishing returns if you keep pushing, and you're probably going to burn out, and the next day you're not going to be able to get anything done. Instead, take a break and recharge so that tomorrow or after the break or whatever, you can get after it and be more effective. So that's a reminder I need to tell myself, but my clients are always like, yeah, you're right. I've been pushing myself too hard.
Yeah, there's no need to push. It's not a race. It's not a competition. Those deadlines, those numbers have been pushed onto us. But when you do something with joy and love, it will multiply.
I am receiving what you're saying and I'm believing it, because even though I'm 5 years in, there are seasons where just because I have a certain amount of people following or liking a video or whatever, I sometimes wonder like, hey, is the work I'm doing helping? And I can truly say I love my clients. And so all I can do is trust and keep being authentically me and follow the energy. And if you do that, a quote from, I think it's Wayne Dyer, that says, money is just an echo of value. So if you just keep putting the ripple of value out there, money has to come back to you. Yeah.
It's an exchange of energy. And the more authentic energy you put out there, it's going to come back. And once you realize that, you'll start to manifest that. And I feel, Ryan, I'm getting this divine download that you would be amazing in a corporate world, because I feel people are like robots and just going about not realizing, and having someone like you even do a talk, a speaker, just you would be able to awaken people massively in large numbers. And I hope people see that. I hope this podcast would get you there.
Thank you. And once the podcast episode comes out, I'm going to save it to my favorites and I'm going to listen. That little section you just said, thank you, because I need that reminder. And I know I can do it. It's just a matter of getting in touch with the right people.
It's invaluable. The ability to show others true emotional intelligence is invaluable, and be able to give them something back. So on that note, where can people who are listening connect with you?
So on the socials, you can look up ADHD Coach Ryan on YouTube, which, by the way, if anyone's listening, here's what you can do. If you enjoyed today's episode, please go to youtube.com and look up Ryan Mayer Coaching, because I am manifesting that I'm going to reach 10,000 subscribers. But Coach Ryan, you don't even have 5,000 yet. How in the world are you going to do that? Well, I'm putting it out there. I placed the order and I can't wait for it to arrive. So that's where they can find me. And then my website is ryanmayercoaching.com. And that's where you can take the free masterclass. That's where my ADHD merch is at. And in fact, for today's listeners, I have a special gift. I would like to share a free digital resource about how to conquer your ADHD in the workplace, but also offer a free month of coaching to anyone who is interested. That's so generous. Why would he do that? Because I love what I'm doing.
Awesome. Thank you so much. All that will be in the show notes for everybody to access, of course, at sparklaunchpodcast.com. It's, once again, invaluable resource right there that you offer. So thank you again for coming on the show and sharing about yourself.
It's my pleasure. And thanks again to both of you for the work that you do in helping to raise awareness and raise vibrations. Let's go.
Thank you, Brian.